and then I'm going to mute myself so it'll just be you and Anusha. But Anusha, when you start, feel free to just introduce yourself as
Yeah.
well, so we know who you are.
Yeah.
Okay, let's do it.
Okay. Okay. Thanks, Jack, and thank you, Meg, for taking the time to do this interview. My name is Anusha. I am a junior at Northwestern. I'm studying social policy and environmental science, and I'm also a member of Fossil Free Northwestern, which is Northwestern's like climate justice group. So we've been working a lot with Climate Action Evanston on a lot of like environmental goals in the city. So I'm super excited to get to chat more with you about like your goals for your campaign and like what you might want to do as a city council member. So yeah, so the first question is, why are you running for city council?
So I'm running for city council because there are people in my ward who don't feel heard. And I think I bring, another perspective.
Can you um can you expand a little bit more on like what perspective you are bringing that maybe differs from what currently is happening, or what are some of the concerns that you feel like are not being represented?
Yeah. So I really think that there's become a tendency in the city for things that are perceived as great ideas that uh, and superficially, they're labeled any something that most people in Evanston would support, uh, but they're not. The details are not fleshed out, and when they are, um, it may not be something that's good for Evanston. So everything that is labeled affordable housing. Who could be against affordable housing? But if you peel back the layers on some of the uh, initiatives or some of the ordinances or proposed ordinances, uh, they um, they need improvement. And I don't feel that we have a city council that is doing enough of that critical sort of independent thinking and really ensuring that the details are worked out and that all avenues and um, alternatives have been explored and that all the facts have been gathered on impact and how other cities have done it, um, and what uniquely Evanston might need.
Yeah, okay, makes sense.
Mhm.
Um, we're gonna move on to like a more personal question. So everyone has special traits and gifts that they can use to change the world. Thinking about your own skills and strengths, what is your climate action superpower?
My climate action superpower. Um, I would say that I am a critical thinker. And so, as I alluded to before, um, there are feel good um, sorts of things that make us feel like we're doing something, but may not be best, have the greatest impact, or be sustainable in the long run. And I think I'm just oriented toward, because of my background, um, to try to look at the big picture. And I don't represent any special interests. I'm just a concerned Evanston resident and mom, and I'm not afraid to speak up and ask questions.
Okay, thank you. And the next question is, and you've kind of already touched on this uh in the follow-up I asked you earlier, but what are the two most important issues you are focused on in your campaign as a challenger, and why are those the most important issues to you?
So, one of the most important issues to me is transparency and process in the city. There are some residents that feel like that lately there's been um, a top down approach to resolving issues and to, in city business. So, where there's not, there's a gesture made or motions are gone through, window dressing, so to speak, sometimes for public input, but there's not genuine engagement or restraining from actually making a plan until residents and all the stakeholders concerns are really taken into account and included.
Yeah, can you give some like examples of when you've seen that happen in the city?
So there was one example recently where the city decided to take out a lease and move the business of the city's, the civic center, all the city offices. And it was discussed and negotiated in a private meeting. And that was later determined to be, it was reviewed by the Attorney General, and it was later determined to have been a violation of the Open Meetings Act. And the Open Meetings Act in Illinois is a law. It's a great law. But it's basically just that, it ensures democracy or ensures that, we don't have behind closed doors business, that members of the public, the taxpayers, all the stakeholders know what is being discussed, who the players are, and how a decision was reached. And it's supposed to be public. It's not supposed to be, a behind closed doors process.
Okay,
So
yeah. So you mentioned transparency as the first issue. Was there a second one that you
yes, the second one that is very important to me is affordable housing. And uh, so the city has emphasized an inclusionary housing ordinance, which most cities have, and it requires plan developments of a certain size to include a certain percentage of affordable units. Now, affordable, that can vary, but it's based on percent of the area median income. Sometimes it's 60, sometimes it's 80. But these are set aside units. And our inclusionary housing ordinance has allowed developers to, instead of doing that, to choose to pay into a fund so they can pay a fee instead of building the units. And they also do not have to, they can opt out of building them in the new development. They can move them off site. And I think that first of all, we only require 15% for affordable units. And there are surrounding suburbs that require, and the city of Chicago requires 20. But I think there's been an overemphasis on this, and I object to, I'd really like to see us change that they can be built off-site. Communities that allow that, villages and cities that allow that, also have a very robust inspection process. And for those units that are not, they're in already existing buildings instead of the new development. And so that there's a whole, laid out process on getting those improved, and they're inspected. And we don't really have that set up in Evanston. And, it just seems like, in a way, like a form of redlining. The new developments are not, our downtown mostly. And the already existing housing is where they're moved to off-site is not downtown. It's in other neighborhoods. So I don't feel all the affordable units should be in one spot. But in any case, I feel that there's been um, an overemphasis on this strategy by the city, and we need a whole menu of strategies for affordable housing, um, and ones that, and this is going to be increasingly important, ones that involve public funds, and we'll have to negotiate as a community how much we're going to invest in that. But I would like to see limited equity land trusts that are permanently affordable. So those are some of my priorities.
Yeah, so I know affordable housing is a significant issue in Evanston and in communities across the country. But sustainability and like climate action is also very important. Like the energy transition is coming, whether or not, whether or not like a federal administration supports it, that will become the norm at some point. So how do you think that you could combine like action on climate with efforts to make housing more affordable in Evanston?
So, well, I think one way is to help preserve our already affordable housing, and provide oversight of the funds that Evanston has allocated towards um, um, affordable green retrofits for low income households. We have two programs, and I don't know if you're aware of them, but your group, I would encourage you to check it out. Google Evanston Green Homes Pilot Program. It's to improve the health and safety and energy efficiency, like putting in energy efficient windows, electrification projects, health and safety improvements in low income homes, and this preserves their value, allows people to stay in their homes. But unfortunately, there has been a lot of money in the city of Evanston allocated towards these programs, and there's been very little to show for it. So there is one organization that received over $300,000 in federal funding um, for households to access decarbonizing strategies, and to weatherize their buildings. And also there were ARPA funds. These are federal funds that came from due because of for pandemic um, mitigation. And so I'm wondering if your organization is concerned about where those funds have gone, because we cannot see the outcome of where this money has gone. So that would be a priority for me. Also, just apart from affordable housing, priority of mine would be to have a city program to bring in, either using a city staff or just bringing in other organization uh, experts to educate homeowners on solar, and what it is, what programs are available, um, and households of means. This is a way that they can contribute. Even through home equity loan, but there's tax credits available, that sort of thing. So that's something I would do apart from assisting, with low income housing to decarbonize.
Yeah, yeah. So I think that leads well into my next question, which is, do you support the proposed healthy buildings ordinance and why or why not?
So I do support a healthy buildings ordinance, but I do not support the one that is currently in its current form. Um, so for example, I know New York City has a healthy buildings ordinance, but it was the result of a process with stakeholders. It was the end product. And I don't, this healthy buildings ordinance in its present form um, does not have enough of the specifications. What the rules are, um, what exactly is going to be expected, what the penalties will be. And I very much sympathize with, feeling, there's a climate emergency and, the urge, we have to do something and we should do it right now. But this goes back to my original, what I was saying originally, but that I think that, you know, good ideas aren't all necessarily in their current state uh, supportable. In other words, we're all very concerned about climate change. So does that mean that every climate change ordinance must be voted, must be approved? No, I disagree. I think we want one that is going to be uh, is robust, and I don't think this one is robust enough. It allows, for example, condos over 50,000 square feet, it exempts them. I have concerns about that. Also, as it impacts affordable housing, I've talked to large building owners who just back of the envelope without knowing, what sort of financial assistance they would get or what sort of programs there would be, that they would anticipate having to increase rents by, at least $400 per unit. And so the renters in our city are the lower middle and middle class and lower, and they're the ones that can least afford this. So, so I really would like to see a process where all the stakeholders are brought in. And also, we have a lot of nonprofits that are very worried about how this is going to impact their ability to stay in their buildings. And there's really not much alternative for a lot of them, places of worship. We have care homes that are affected. And um, I, I just think that we need a more robust, detailed, healthy buildings ordinance. And at this point, it's not at that point. Also, yeah, we need input from all the stakeholders. I mean, ITM basically wrote the ordinance. They're an electric company. I think it's advisable to follow money also. Uh, there are entities that stand to profit from going to all electric. And while that is not an accusation of any kind, but it just needs to be considered. There are also individuals who could, maybe stand to groups of individuals who could stand to profit from it. And, that's just uh, part of the fact-finding process and something to take into consideration when evaluating the ordinance as it stands. And I also support Northwestern's offer to use, to bring to bear all the resources in um, policy and engineering and everything that the university has, all the experts in figuring out how to implement this in Evanston. And I also, since Evanston would be the first city in the state who did this, I think it's important to get it right. There are, as the ordinance stands now, I know that there are property owners and finance who have spoken to finance people who say because of the lack of specificity on exactly what their financial situation is in the future, vis-a-vis the healthy buildings ordinance, if it is passed, would be that they would have it would be, be difficult for them to sell, or it would be difficult for them to get financing. And that impacts the vitality of Evanston. We don't want to pass a healthy buildings ordinance that then has a negative impact so that other cities are discouraged from adopting one. So I think we need to get it right and do the long, slow work, although it will feel good to pass something, anything. But I also think that there is a misconception that people who are, would not vote for the healthy buildings ordinance as currently written are on the other side of the issue or are enemies of climate action or don't care. That's not the case. There are many of us that just don't think that it's ready yet and understand completely the urge, the need, to want to do something now. But we need to not just jump on anything that sounds like affordable housing. It seems like people in my battery is about to die. I'm sorry, my phone battery. We need to do the hard work of getting the details right for affordable housing and for climate action and the healthy buildings ordinance.
Okay, thank you. And then the last question before I ask for you can add anything else after this, but if you were elected, how will you elevate youth voices as a city council member?
Excuse me, just a minute. I'm going to plug this in. So I would like to have, invite youth voices to ward meetings, reach out to ETHS, and the fourth ward is home to some Northwestern students also. But, it's possible to have a youth working group, I think, for the ward.
Okay, and then the last question is there anything else you would like to add, specifically like a policy you would want to work on or introduce while you're in city council, perhaps related to the climate?
So I think that we need to reduce consumption, and we need discussions and a task force about that. We're not talking that much about how do we reduce consumption overall. A small thing that could be done, we're building more bike lanes, it looks like, on Chicago Avenue. I would really like to see the city partner with an organization that would do, have mentors for bike riding. And if you want to become a bike rider, for example, I think of myself, I am not confident enough to navigate bike riding, instead of using my car to go to Whole Foods from my house. I'm not a confident bike rider, and I think that the rules of the road, just bike safety for drivers, I'd like to see a big education program that would partner people who are already primarily bikers with people who would like to become bikers. And then I think we also need education on safety to protect our bikers, for drivers and bikers both, but especially for drivers. And then, this will make us more of a bike-friendly city and reduce consumption.
Okay, thank you. And then I lied. There's actually one more question. Um,
Okay.
so at Northwestern, we learn a lot about like teamwork through like group projects and collaboration in class. And just from like what I've learned at Northwestern, sometimes when I watch like city council meetings, it's not always the best example of teamwork. So if elected, what can you and your colleagues do to encourage more productive collaboration as a council?
So when you say teamwork, can you tell me what you have in mind? That
Just
is not example of, it's not always a good example of teamwork. Can you tell me what you have in
yeah.
mind?
So I just think like sometimes when I watch the meetings, there is a lot of back and forth, a lot of time that seems wasted as somebody watching the meeting. I think sometimes the meetings can go more efficiently if like agreements can be reached faster between the council members. There's often conversation about things to me that seem very bureaucratic, and I think other folks would agree with them. And also just like beyond the meetings as well, working with the other council members to on like broader goals for the city.
So I think some of what you see, conversation, hashing things out, disagreement, making motions, I think that's good. I think you have to remember that it's a city council, there are politics involved, there's power involved, and it's not, by analogy, like a teamwork. It's not a team in the same sense as you would have a team at a workplace, or it's not a committee at a church. So the back and forth and disagreement, I don't think is necessarily negative. And I think that, part of having open meetings is we get to see it in real time. Um, so there are going to be differences of opinion and they have to be hashed out. Um, and we do it publicly. And that way the public knows whose position, who takes what position on things. And so I'm not, I think that sometimes maybe council members can go on a long time and maybe they need to not think aloud so much, or but there's not, we don't want them having a lot of conversations about city issues at all, um, behind closed doors or in private. So I don't think what you're seeing is necessarily, I would kind of disagree and say that I don't think it's negative. This is politics, and politics, there are power struggles and back and forth, and there doesn't have to be consensus.
Okay. Those are all of my questions. Thank you so much.
Right. I have been here the whole time, I swear. Great work, Meg. And good job, Anusha, with all the questions. That's it for us. So thank you so much
All
for joining. And like we said, we'll kind of as we edit the videos and everything like that. Right now, that's kind of our limiting factor is how quickly we can go through all of them. We have like 5 more of these today, so you're our first one, which is good.
Okay.
And we'll have them out, definitely before, of course, before April 1st, but hopefully, even before early voting starts. So thanks so
Okay.
much.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.